Kousei Arima's world doesn't collapse. It just goes quiet. Not the quiet that follows a scream, but the kind that arrives when something essential is removed and no one notices right away. A silence that hides inside normalcy. After his mother dies, sound disappears. The piano is still there. The keys still move under his fingers. His hands remember every scale, every arpeggio, every song carved into muscle memory through years of discipline. The audience still applauds, but the music never reaches him. He knows what he's playing. He knows where the emotion should be, but inside, there's just nothing. The piano becomes mechanical, hollow. People mistake this for composure. They say he's strong, resilient. In truth, Kousei doesn't grieve. He freezes. Grief is motion, pain moving through you. What happens to him is stasis. Time just locks. His mother's death doesn't free him. It imprisons him. The piano, once his whole identity, becomes a constant reminder not of beauty, but of fear, of a conditional love that only came with perfection. So, he stops. Life shrinks down to school, walking home, surviving. Then Kaori Miyazono crashes into his life. She's loud laughter, unapologetic movement, a presence that refuses to be background noise. Where Kousei's world is muted grayscale, Kaori is pure, unrestrained color. She's a violinist who doesn't treat music as something sacred, but as something alive, something to be provoked. Her performances are reckless, emotionally untamed. She bends the rules. She ignores expectations. Where he learned that discipline is survival, she acts as if freedom is the entire point. She is everything his world has been missing, and everything it's completely unprepared for. Kaori doesn't ask for permission to enter his life. She just drags him back in, back to the stage, back toward music, and back toward feeling something again. Thanks for watching. She forces him back to the piano, back to that silent, haunted space. She doesn't tiptoe around his fear. She charges right at it, with the fierce belief of someone who hasn't yet felt true loss. She thinks exposure is the cure, and the most unsettling part, she's not entirely wrong. Slowly, the sound starts to trickle back. It's not the clean, perfect music of his past. It's broken, distorted, terrifying. But it's alive. For the first time since his mother's death, Kousei feels something more than just a void. He feels fear, shame, and a flicker of hope. The stage becomes his battlefield, a war between his trauma and Kaori's relentless belief that he belongs to the music, not the silence. He messes up. He stumbles through performances, misses notes, and collapses under the pressure. But every single time, she's there to pull him back up. She stands beside him, living proof that his world hasn't ended. Slowly, dangerously, Kousei starts to see Kaori as his oxygen. When she's near, the silence fades. When she smiles, the world feels right again. When she plays, he can finally breathe. He doesn't call it love. That would be too risky, too vulnerable. He calls it gratitude, inspiration, motivation. But underneath it all, something heavier is taking root. Dependence. Kaori becomes the very center of his recovery. She's not just a friend or a fellow musician anymore. She's the condition for his healing. With her, the piano is tolerable. Without her, it's a monster. The real danger isn't romance. It's this rescue. But Kaori isn't the unbreakable force she pretends to be. Behind her brilliant smile, there are cracks. A small cough here, a stumble there, a weariness that creeps in when she thinks no one is looking. She laughs it all off, but a shadow of illness is always there, just at the edge of her light. It's unsettling, but the story doesn't treat it like a horror. Not yet. It's presented as part of her tragic charm, her mystery, and that's the problem. Because Kousei, lost in his own rescue, doesn't see her as a person who could ever disappear. He sees her as a constant, the one thing he can finally depend on. Thanks for watching. If this story resonates with you, make sure to follow for more. He sees her as an answer to silence, to fear, to the question of whether life can feel meaningful again. He begins to anchor his sense of self to her presence unconsciously, instinctively. When she is near, he functions. When she is absent, the old stillness creeps back in. This is not love yet, but attachment has arrived, and attachment is most dangerous when it mistakes itself for salvation. Kaori interrupts Kousei's death in progress and calls it living. But interruptions are temporary by nature. They are not foundations. They do not last. And the quiet horror of this act is not that something bad is coming. It is that something beautiful is being asked to carry a weight it was never meant to bear. Love has not appeared, but the need for it has. And when love is expected to heal what grief froze, it rarely survives intact. Kaori's body does not fail all at once. It hesitates. Hospital visits replace rehearsals gradually, first as inconveniences, then as interruptions, then as absences no one knows how to discuss. Appointments stretch longer. Recovery takes more effort. Her laughter, once explosive and effortless, dulls at the edges. The brilliance that once defined her flickers unpredictably. Nothing announces itself as final, and that is what makes it unbearable. Kousei notices the changes, but he refuses to assemble them into meaning. Each symptom is treated as isolated. Each absence is rationalized. Each warning sign is filed away under temporary. She will recover. She always does. This belief becomes his anchor, not because it is true, but because the alternative is unthinkable. Waiting becomes his version of love. If he waits long enough, patiently enough, faithfully enough, everything will return to how it was. The laughter, the music, the world with color. But love, in this story, is not protection. It is postponement. Time does not stop because he believes in her. It only slows enough to feel cruel. Kaori continues to push him forward even as she recedes. Play, she insists, not gently, but urgently. Live, she demands, as if daring him to disobey. Smile, she orders. Even as her own strength thins, she becomes less a presence and more a force applied to his life, less a girl and more a directive. Her encouragement no longer feels mutual. It feels necessary, purposeful, almost rehearsed. Kousei does not notice the shift. He cannot afford to. To notice would be to admit that something is ending. So instead, he clings. He practices obsessively, not for music itself, but for proximity, for approval, for reassurance that he is still needed, still connected, still tethered to her world. Each performance becomes an offering. If he plays well enough, she will stay. If he improves fast enough, She will recover. If he becomes strong enough, abandonment will be cancelled. This is not conscious manipulation. It is fear dressed as devotion. And fear, when it calls itself love, becomes relentless. The horror sharpens here, not through death, but through awareness. Because Kaori knows. She knows she is dying. She knows the countdown has already begun. She also knows that Kousei is not strong enough to survive watching her fade in real time. That the boy who lost sound once will lose everything if forced to confront loss again so soon, so directly. So she lies. Not dramatically, not cruelly. She keeps the truth shallow, keeps details vague, keeps the future undefined. She speaks in when instead of if. She deflects questions with humor. She minimizes pain. She transforms deterioration into inconvenience. She believes this is kindness, and in a way, it is. But it is also control. Her love becomes a performance, the most demanding one she has ever given. Every time she pushes Kousei toward growth, she is racing the clock. Every rehearsal costs her energy she cannot replenish. Every smile is borrowed against a future she will never reach. She is spending herself strategically, not to be remembered, but to ensure he survives her absence. She wants him independent. He wants her permanent. These goals are not compatible. So love becomes sacrifice. Sacrifice becomes concealment. Concealment becomes erasure. The more she fades, the more she insists he shine. The more she weakens, the harder she pushes him toward stages, competitions, futures that do not include her. Kousei feels this pressure, but misinterprets it. He believes she is motivating him. He does not see that she is preparing him. The hospital corridors grow familiar. Too familiar. Rooms fill with quiet instead of music. The hum of machines replaces applause. Time slows in uncomfortable ways. Waiting becomes endless. News arrives in fragments no one wants to translate. Kousei begins to feel something shift inside him. A low, persistent dread that no amount of practice can drown out. But he still refuses to name it. Because naming it would give it power. And power would make it real. When the truth finally breaks through, not as a revelation, but as inevitability, it is too late to stop anything. He stands in hospital hallways filled with a silence different from the one he knew before. This silence is not numb. It is heavy, expectant, final. For the first time since his mother's death, he understands something terrifying. Music did not leave him. It was waiting for grief to finish its work. The sound returns fully now, not as comfort, but as confrontation. Every note carries weight. Every melody threatens to collapse him under memory. Music becomes the medium through which loss finally completes its cycle. And Kousei realizes the cruelest truth of all. Love did not save Kaori. It delayed goodbye. And delayed goodbyes do not hurt less. They hurt longer. By the time he understands what she has done for him and what she has taken from herself, there is no space left for gratitude, only grief and guilt, and the unbearable knowledge that love, in trying to soften death, sometimes only teaches it how to wait. Kaori Miyazono dies offstage, not in a concert hall, not beneath bright lights, not with music swelling to give her death meaning. She dies somewhere quiet, antiseptic, and ordinary, behind hospital doors that close without ceremony. There is no final performance, No dramatic crescendo, no moment where Kousei gets to understand in time. When death comes, it does not ask if he is ready, it simply removes her. What Kousei receives instead is a letter. Paper, ink, words chosen carefully, because they will never be revised. He holds it for a long time before opening it, longer than necessary. Long enough to pretend that as long as it remains unread, Kaori still exists in some undefined state. Not alive, not gone, just paused. Reading it will finalize things. So, he delays. Eventually, inevitability wins. Kaori's handwriting is familiar, playful curves, confident strokes. It looks too alive for what it contains. That alone feels cruel. She writes about her fear first, not of dying, but of disappearing without mattering. She admits she always knew her body was betraying her, that every reckless smile, every impulsive leap, every forced optimism was a negotiation with time she did not have. She confesses that she entered Kousei's life deliberately, that she orchestrated their meeting, that her brightness was not accidental. It was strategy. She wanted to be unforgettable. She wanted to interrupt his stillness before her own world collapsed. And she succeeded. She writes about love, honestly, painfully. Not the idealized version, not destiny, not soulmates. She loved him because he was broken in a way that mirrored her own fear. Because he lived as if already halfway gone. Because she recognized in him the same quiet terror she carried. The fear of being erased without having truly lived. She admits she pushed him too hard. She admits she lied. She admits she stole time from him by pretending there was more of it. I didn't want you to stop living just because I was leaving, she writes. So I became louder than my own fear. By the time Kousei finishes the letter, his hands are shaking, not violently, but continuously, as if they may never fully steady again. This is not catharsis. This is recalibration. The grief does not explode. It settles, and that is worse. Because nothing looks broken from the outside. Kousei does not collapse. He does not scream. He does not lose control. He simply absorbs the absence. The world does not stop for Kaori. That is the next cruelty. Spring arrives anyway. Cherry blossoms bloom on schedule, indifferent to who is alive to witness them. Classmates talk. Birds return. The city resumes its rhythms as if nothing of consequence has occurred. Kousei notices how easily life continues, how unforgivably functional it is. Music remains. The piano waits. And this is where the story becomes truly unsettling. Because Kaori was right. He can hear again. The silence that once smothered him is gone. Notes land clearly now. Sharp, precise, emotionally intact. His hands move with confidence he once believed impossible. His performances grow stronger, more expressive, more alive than they have ever been. From the outside, this looks like healing. From the inside, it feels like theft. Every note reminds him of why he can hear. Every applause echoes with absence. Kaori's no longer beside him, dragging him forward, demanding life with reckless urgency. Instead, she exists everywhere, embedded in memory, in muscle memory, in the way he phrases sound. He carries her not as presence, but as infrastructure. And infrastructure is invisible. That is the horror. People praise his growth. They tell him how inspiring it is, how strong he is, how proud Kaori would be. They mean well. They do not understand what they are asking him to accept. Because living well does not feel like victory. It feels like betrayal. He begins to realize that Kaori's love was never meant to last. It was meant to function. She was not a partner in his future. She was a catalyst designed to burn out once her purpose was fulfilled, and purpose is a brutal substitute for permanence. The letter did not free him. It conscripted him. He must now live well enough to justify her sacrifice, play beautifully enough to prove her pain was worth it, smile convincingly enough that her death does not feel meaningless. This is not love continuing. This is love becoming obligation. He plays in competitions again, and something strange happens. When he closes his eyes, he does not imagine Kaori watching him. He does not hear her voice cheering or teasing or urging him forward. He feels nothing. The emptiness has stabilized. It is no longer raw. It is structural. The pain is not sharp anymore. It is integrated. A quiet, constant weight that does not interfere with daily function. He eats, he sleeps, he performs, and that is the final cruelty. Because pain that interferes can be treated. Pain that integrates becomes identity. Kousei learns how to exist with a hollow center. He becomes good at it. The world rewards him for it. Years from now, people will talk about this story as tragic and beautiful. They will frame it as inspiration, as proof that love changes us for the better. But they will be wrong in a very specific way. This love did not heal him. It repurposed him. Kaori did not save Kousei from silence so they could share a future. She saved him so he could endure one without her. And Ianurun's is not the same as happiness. The final realization comes quietly, during an ordinary moment. Kousei sits alone after a performance. The hall has emptied. The applause has faded. The piano lid is closed. There is no one to turn to. No one to share the aftermath with. No one waiting in the wings, smiling too brightly, pretending not to be afraid. And he understands, finally, what this story has always been about. Not about love lost too soon, but about love that arrives, knowing it cannot stay, and does its work anyway. Kaori did not leave behind devastation. She left behind functionality, and that is why the emptiness persists, because devastation eventually resolves. But functionality continues. This was never a romance meant to break hearts violently. It was meant to hollow them out quietly, to teach a truth that is deeply uncomfortable. Some people enter your life not to stay, but to make sure you survive. Losing them and survival, when it costs connection, is not a victory. It is a sentence. Kousei walks forward. He will live. He will play. He will smile. And somewhere beneath all of it, an absence will remain, not screaming, not bleeding, not dramatic, just present, forever. That is the ending. And that is why it hurts.